Hey guys, what's going on? This is Snacks Thoughts. I say welcome again to Snacks Thoughts. And today I have some thoughts, in reflection, in retrospect. I was thinking to myself, and I shared with a friend, and it's just that we are in some interesting times right about now. I reflected on how we have this pandemic with the COVID-19 that is occurring. I thought about the failing economy that we are in, basically a depression that is basically falling apart at the seams. And then lastly, I considered the events that happened with George Floyd and the social justice soldiers that are taking a stand, to make change and an end to police brutality, and not only just police brutality, but also an end to systemic racism and the inequalities that are going on here in America. And I definitely want to say this. I want to give a shout out to the young people of this generation. I don't care, black, white, Indian, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I want to give them a shout and give credit where credit is due. And they have really encouraged my heart, and I'm very proud of them for taking a stand. To do that which is right, and they've done it on their own without a leader. They put themselves out there on the line to stand up, and what they've done is not only set this nation here in America on fire, but they've also set the globe on fire. And I want to share this briefly with you before I get ready to make my point. And I'm not here to push in any of my beliefs on anybody, but, I do believe in God's word, I do. And so I want to share this with you quickly, and then I'm going to get into sharing what my thoughts are, on this podcast. And I'm coming from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And it says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to read, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace." And I want to leave it at that. But here's where I'm going with this in my thoughts tonight. And what I wanted to title this podcast was America, a Time for Change. And I'm going to say it again. America, a time for change. And it's no big secret, as we've all seen on social media and on the news, obviously, the murder of George Floyd by that police officer, Officer Chauvin, and the other three that were complicit, in it, and that did actually aid and abet. Then we had that young man that was out jogging, that Mr. Arbery, We have the young lady in Texas, that got shot murdered in her own home. And we've had a list, Eric Garner, and it just goes on and on and on. And the reason why I say that I title it America, A Time for Change, very often what happens is that when people want to keep the status quo, or they want to keep things the way they are because change is uncomfortable. Oftentimes, even with the African American community, within our community, some of us have become so accustomed to losing that we have forgotten how to stand up and win and compete. We've gotten to a certain state of complacency, and what it took was a young generation to basically stir up the pot, and basically turn this place upside down. Now, let me say this: I am definitely not at all for riots or for looting, or for people being harmed, whether it's law enforcement or the protesters. I definitely am for peaceful protesting. But the truth be told is that for many years, African Americans have protested peacefully. And what I found is that we stayed not being heard. And oftentimes, if you want to say the good old boys and the old heads, they, a lot of individuals or maybe certain groups that are in their comfort zones, comfort zones meaning things such as white privilege, comfort zones of minority buffer classes, whereas they are utilized to keep and ensure that African Americans remain at the bottom. And I am by no means a social justice warrior, but we have to be honest and tell the truth. And what these young men and women have done, be they black, white, whatever, Asian, whatever, what they've done is they have basically ripped the scab off of a serious wound that we have in the United States, and that we the adults have refused, to address it. Nobody wants to have the conversation about inequality or systemic racism because it is uncomfortable. And what I would say is that, shout out to the young people, but America, it is time to change. They cannot stay the way that they've always been. The status quo cannot exist. It can't stay that way. White supremacy cannot continue to go on. It is not fair that one group should have privilege at the expense of the suffering, at the expense and suffering of another. It cannot go on. And what has happened is that what you are seeing in America, and the world is seeing this, is that these are the wounds that we have in America that we need to heal from. And the only way that is going to happen is that we've got to move just from having a conversation to action. And that means that leadership, from the presidency all the way down locally, I'm talking about till parents teaching their kids, and even how we interact and deal with each other. For those, if you don't say anything or try to make a change, then you basically are complicit. That means that you are also a part of the problem. And we cannot afford to just let these young folks just, take the brunt of the weight, and then some of us from other generations, not give them support and help them out. Because like it or not, in this society, it's got to be all hands on deck. It has to be all hands on deck. We each have a role. And granted, everybody in a movement is not a frontline soldier. Everybody's not. But we all can do our part. You know, I break it down to roles. You know, I break it down to roles. You have some people that everybody is not going to be special forces. Everybody's not going to be the soldiers that do the grunt work. You know, you're gonna have some admin. You gotta have some people in the medical field. You gotta have some people that handle logistics and the supply. You know, you gotta have your support. But each and every one of us, for those of us, you know what I'm saying, that are Americans, we do owe something to this society. Each and every last one of us owe it, because when the benefits come out, we benefit from it. And obviously, we understand that there are different socioeconomic classes that are in this country. That's understood. We understand everybody can't be rich, but everybody deserves to have equal opportunity. And if the haves, you know what I'm saying, that can help, you know, make a change, if you continue and you go on and you don't put all hands on deck, then you are just equally as guilty. And I'm not just talking about, I ain't talking about white people, just white people. I'm talking about blacks too. You know, I'm talking about Latinos too. If we aren't American and we benefit, you know what I'm saying, off of this country, that means it's got to be all hands on deck. We all have to do our part. And what these young people, what they have proven is that it can be done. But it is a matter of if we as Americans, do we want it to be done? Are we going to hide and sit back in the shadows and let criminality, inequality, systemic racism, and knowing that things are wrong and we don't do anything about it? Well, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me is not an answer. That's not the right answer. Because ultimately, in the end, we all are affected by it in one form or another. And when I see those young people out there doing their thing, you know, I sat back and I was like, man, it's like, you know, it's like, well, you know, what am I doing? You know, so I've decided that, you know, hey, let me get on in here and, you know, get my hands on deck. Because I would not want an opportunity to help support, you know, these young people, and also, you know, for this country, you know what I'm saying, to help bring about change and just not do my part and just let it go by. We each have a part. And it is time for change. You're seeing it. And if we don't do our part and stand up as Americans, then if you think that this country is busting at the seams now, you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. It is only going to get worse until we get all hands on deck. And there may be maybe some people, they may not like it. You know what I'm saying? May not like the change, but, you know what I'm saying, change is here and it's coming. And you can either get with the program or you can get run over and left behind. But it's here. And the people have spoken up and they said no more. And that goes for politicians, that goes for judges, that goes for law enforcement, that goes for leaders, that goes for everyday people. It's time out. You know, it is time for change in America, and we can no longer avoid it. It cannot be avoided any longer. You know, this is the season for change. And it has to be all hands on deck. Each of us has a role to play, and we need to do our part to right the wrongs and, you know, make things right so that this country can be better for all. It makes no sense that African Americans should have to, men and women should have to be killed and beat on. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not right for any group of people to have to suffer. It's not right. And it's not just African Americans, but it's like, other races of people should not be attacked either. They should not be. That's not what America is about. This country is a melting pot, and it is a mix of every different race. This is more than a mix of M&Ms or Skittles. This country is. And we as Americans, each one deserves the right to be able to freely enjoy the privileges that are afforded to them by the Constitution of the United States. It's got to be all hands on deck. It's time. And yes, change, it is uncomfortable. But in the United States, we have a gaping wound, and it's like it's not going to heal if we remain the same. It can't heal if we remain the same way. Yes, indeed. But I'm going to end this, for now. But that's my thought. America, a time for change. It is time for change. We're in a different season. The status quo, in the old way of doing things, it can't hold anymore. And we have to get ready, for the move and the shift that is coming. Because these young people, they standing up and they speaking out, and they are the future. And the old heads that want to keep things the way it's always been, eventually, they're going to pass away and die off, and the young people are going to inherit this country one way or another. So we can either make the changes now, or it will be made, in the future. And at this point right now, for what this country, for where we're at, the change has to come, because people are not going to take it anymore. It can't hold anymore. So the change is now. It's now. And we can make the transition as easy as it can be, or we can make it as difficult as we want it to be. But either way, as a society, we will change. It'll either come the hard way, or it'll come with a smoother ride. But that is up to us as a society to decide which way we want it. But that's all I have for this podcast. And the name of my podcast is Snacks Thoughts. That's SNAKZTHOUGHTS. Snacks Thoughts. And please, I thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my podcast. Push it out. Share my podcast, y'all. Share it out. We need to have the dialogue, and everybody, all hands on deck. Do your part. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is called Eric Broadus YouTube. That's EricBroadus YouTube, or ericbroadusyoutube.com. So go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Share it, push it out, smash the like button, leave the comments. I'd love to dialogue with you. All right, guys? But I thank you again for listening. But again, this is some serious thing right here. Something for thought and to take action on. America, a time for change. That's all I got, guys. Peace out. Catch you on the next one.